Yeah, Gurudev, and thank you for joining us today. So, Gurudev begins this segment speaking about the importance of mornings and how even a glimpse of awareness can make the whole day sustainable. How do you see this from a Vedic perspective? Yeah, Gurudev, in the Vedas, Brahma Muhurta, or the period before sunrise, is described as the most conducive for self realization. Gurudev's words align with this ancient wisdom. A short period of awareness at dawn charges the subtle energy field, what we call prana sharira. The rishis declared Uttisthana Jagrata, the rise and awaken, not merely physically but in consciousness. When Gurudev says a glimpse of it is enough, he refers to Chitta Kundalini, the awareness energy that vibrates even in brief moments of silence. It's not about duration, it's about depth. Even 2 minutes of deep stillness in the morning recognize the nervous system and align one's energies with the cosmic rhythm, leading to a balanced and luminous day. Now, Gurudev mentions Chitta Kundalini as very vibrant and strong. Can you explain this in terms of spiritual energy experience during meditation? The Chitta Kundalini refers to the awakened consciousness within us. Unlike the physiological energy we feel after exercise or food, the Chitta Kundalini is subtler. It is awareness itself vibrating in every cell. During deep meditation or Sudarshan Kriya, many practitioners experience waves of bliss, tingling sensations, or stillness. These are expressions of Chitta Kundalini. Gurudev's emphasis on it being vibrant and strong means that when one's awareness stabilizes, the energy field becomes radiant and self sustaining. This energy doesn't deplete, instead, it replenishes body and mind. It brings resilience, clarity, and enthusiasm. Gurudev connects this with the scientific understanding that brain coherence and autonomic balance improve when consciousness becomes steady, proving that spirituality is deeply physiological as well as transcendental. Now, Gurudev outlines three aspects of energy: the digestive, burning, and illuminating. How does this triad appear in the Vedic sciences? This triad reflects the principle of Agni Tattva in Vedic cosmology. Agni, or the fire, is not just physical combustion, it symbolizes transformation. The Prakashika, or illuminating energy, corresponds to Tejas Agni, which gives perception and knowledge. The Pachaka, or digestive energy, relates to Jataragni, the internal fire that assimilates both food and experiences. The Dahaka, or burning energy, relates to Tapas Agni, which purifies through endurance. Gurudev's delineation beautifully modernizes their Vedic framework. Each energy refines the other. Illumination guides digestion prevents stagnation, and burning removes impurities. When harmonized, they make life luminous, stable, and pure, a reflection of the trinity of fire mentioned in the Rig Veda. Now, can you connect Gurudev's concept of illumination, digestion, and burning with the psychology of daily life? Absolutely, Jai Gurudev. In daily life, the Prakashika is awareness, the ability to observe, understand, and learn. Digestive energy is emotional resilience, or a capacity to process events without being overwhelmed. Burning energy is a transformation. When we let go of resentment or sorrow, converting pain into strength. Gurudev's insight is a psychological brilliance. When awareness is high, digestion is natural. When digestion is complete, burning turns into wisdom rather than trauma. Through meditation, pranayama, and seva, this inner alchemy happens spontaneously. Stress and negativity get burned, emotions are digested, and intellect becomes illuminated. It's a living example of how spirituality refines psychology. Now, in scriptures, digestion is often symbolic of assimilation. How does this connect to Gurudev's line, you digest things without even thinking? Indeed, the Upanishads often equate anna, the food, and anubhava, or experience. Just as the stomach digests food unconsciously, the subtle body digests life's experiences. When consciousness is pure, Gurudev's line reveals a profound yogic truth. The higher intelligence within us, the Atma Jnana, processes experiences naturally if we don't interfere with judgment or resilience. This is what the Bhagavad Gita calls the Samatvam Yoga Uchyate, the equilibrium of mind. When one meditates regularly, this digestive process strengthens, painful memories lose their emotional charge, and wisdom remains as the essence. Now, Gurudev distinguishes between burning and digesting. How does this difference show up in practical emotional healing? Burning and digesting are complementary but distinct. Burning, the Dahana Shakti, is purification through awareness. It's when emotions surface and dissolve through observation. Digesting, or the Pachana Shakti, is when experiences are assimilated. into understanding and no longer disturb us. Many people burn in anger or grief but fail to digest, leading to exhaustion. Gurudev's teachings, especially Sudarshan Kriya, enable both the rhythmic breathing, clear stored stress or burning, and meditation integrates the learning or digesting. That's why after Kriya, people often say, I feel lighter but wiser. It's energy working on multiple levels, the physical, emotional, and spiritual. Now, the illuminating energy Gurudev calls the Prakashika. How is it related to the Vedic idea of consciousness as light? The word Prakasha means light, both literal and metaphysical. The Isha Upanishad proclaims, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, lead me from darkness to light. This light is awareness. The Prakashika Shakti illuminates perception, enabling us to see, hear, and understand. Gurudev revives this ancient idea in modern times. Every act of knowing, seeing, or listening is the play of Chaitanya Jyoti. It's not the eyes that see, but the light of consciousness within. When Gurudev asks, Are you listening? He brings our attention back to the seer, the luminous awareness behind all cognition. Now, Gurudev says that energy makes you vanish. What does that mean spiritually? It's one of the most subtle points in this discourse. When energy expands fully, individuality dissolves. You don't disappear physically, but the ego, the sense of separatedness, vanishes. This is laya or absorption into the infinite. Gurudev describes how deep meditation makes one feel transparent, as if I am not only existences. This vanishing is blissful because it's freedom from limitation. That's why enlightened beings radiate peace. They operate from pure energy, not ego. In spiritual evolution, illumination matures into dissolution, where energy becomes one with the source or the Parabrahman. Now, can this triad of illumination, digestion, and burning be correlated to the three gunas of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas? Indeed, the Prakashika aligns with Sattva Guna, the quality of light and clarity. Digestive energy corresponds to Rajas, the dynamism that processes and assimilates. Burning energy resonates with Tamas when destructive, but when purified, it becomes Tapas, the transformative discipline. Gurudev's teaching shows that how these three energies, when harmonized, create a balanced personality. When illumination dominates, knowledge flows. When digestion is strong, life is stable. When burning is conscious, transformation is effortless. This is a Triguna Matma Shakti, the play of energy that sustains both the microcosm and macrocosm. Now, how can we practically enhance these three energies in modern life? Jagadav Gurudev offers three primary methods: the sadhana, seva, and satsang. Meditation and pranayama increase prakashika, illumination through awareness, balanced food, rest, and gratitude improve pachaka, emotional digestion, selfless service, forgiveness, and devotion intensify dahana, the purifying energy. When we practice all three, energy flows freely and naturally. Even 5 minutes of silence in the morning, as Gurudev mentions, tunes the system. Modern research validates this. Regular meditation reduces cortisol, improves digestion, and increases brain coherence. The spiritual science is becoming a physiological truth. Gurudev mentioned three types of energies: the prakashika, the parika, and the process of digestion. Could you explain what these mean? Gurudev beautifully illustrates energy as a spectrum of transformation. The Prakashika Shakti is luminous, it expands, brings clarity, joy, and knowledge. When one's consciousness is high, energy radiates as light and peace. The Parika Shakti is burning, it arises when there is resistance or non acceptance. If we hold resentment, anger, or guilt, we burn in that vibration. The third stage is digestion, when we fully accept and integrate an experience. Energy transforms into wisdom. Gurudev reminds us that true sadhana means digesting experiences so they no longer disturb our peace. It's not suppression but transcendence. Vedic texts call this Agni Tattva, the internal fire that refines. In the Rig Veda, Agni is both destroyer and purifier. When Gurudev speaks of digestion, it aligns with the Jatara Agni or the physical digestion and the Jnana Agni or the spiritual digestion. Both transform the gross into subtle. Hence, energy moves from burning to brilliance through acceptance. Now, Gurudev said, whatever you don't accept, you burn with. How does non acceptance create inner suffering? The non acceptance creates resistance. When we reject a person, situation, or emotion, we trap that energy within. Gurudev explains it as a fire that keeps burning. The anger, the guilt, or regret become heat that consumes the prana. Meditation, Sudarshan Kriya, and Seva channel this energy outward, converting it into light. Once you accept, energy gets digested. It no longer burdens you. The Bhagavad Gita says, Apurya manam achala pratishtham. Like rivers entering the ocean, experiences flow into the wise who remain unmoved. Rejection creates turbulence, while acceptance leads to stillness. Tapas or austerity is misunderstood. It's not self torture, but the fire of transformation. The non acceptance burns as parika, but through jnana, it turns into prakashika, the illumination. Gurudev's insight unites psychology and Vedanta effortlessly. Now, Gurudev compared this process of energy to chemistry and physics. How is spiritual science similar to physical science? Gurdev's analogy is profound. Just as molecules from atoms and subatomic particles, our consciousness too has layers: the body, breath, mind, intellect, memory, and ego and self. Physics studies matter, spirituality studies consciousness, observer. Both deal with energy transformation. The same precision with which scientists study molecular structure is needed in self inquiry. In Vedic cosmology, the universe or the Brahmanda and the body or the Pindanda mirror each other. Yatha Pinde Tatha Brahmande. Gurudev's reference to chemistry and physics symbolizes that Atma Vidya is not vague mysticism but an exact inner science. Quantum physics today speaks of wave particle duality. Ancient seers described this as a Saguna Nirguna with form and formless. When Gurudev says it's so deep, he's pointing to a cosmos, both outer and inner, and infinite field of exploration. Now, Gurudev mentioned digestion as an essential part of sadhana. How does this apply in daily life? Negative digestion means assimilation without residue. When we argue, feel pain, or fail, these experiences linger unless we process them consciously. Through meditation, breathwork, and silence, we digest emotions. Gurudev often says, don't analyze too much, meditate. The mind becomes clear like the body after good digestion. In Ayurveda and Yoga Shastra, undigested impressions or ama create physical and mental toxicity. Similarly, emotional ama blocks prana. Pranayama burns this ama gently. Gurudev's emphasis on digestion is the modern form of tapa or inner purification. Every sadhak must remember learning is not enough. One must integrate it. Knowledge becomes wisdom only when digested. Now, Gurudev spoke of energy becoming happiness when it is prakashika. How does one cultivate that state? Prakashika energy arises when one's prana is high and emotions balanced through regular Sudarshan Kriya, silence courses, and seva. The nervous system becomes light, joy arises effortlessly, not from external stimuli, but inner luminosity. Gurudev calls it the glow of being. In the Tatatriya Upanishad, it is said, Anando Brahmeti Vyajnat, bliss is Brahman. When energy radiates as Prakashika, it reflects Ananda. The Vedas classify energy as tamasic or inert, rajasic or active, and sattvic or luminous. Gurudev's teaching translates this ancient classification into experiential science. Prakashika is the flowing of sattva. When you serve selflessly, meditate deeply, and surrender wholly, energy naturally turns into happiness. Now, what does Gurudev mean when he says you are burning with it until you digest it? Jagadev, it means every unresolved emotion, memory, or judgment creates friction in our subtle body. Like undigested food, it causes discomfort. Through awareness and meditation, you let that energy surface, observe it, and release it. The moment of complete acceptance is digestion, the fire becomes light. Now, this aligns with the Yoga Sutra 2.10. Te pratisrava hiya suksham. Subtle impressions are removed by their counterflow. Gurudev is describing the pratiprasava, the reversal of mental tendencies. When one digests experiences through awareness, the vasanas dissolve, hence energy that once burnt you becomes a very fuel of enlightenment. Now, Gurudev compared this understanding to studying cosmology. What is the significance of that comparison? Just as cosmology studies vast galaxies and black holes, spiritual science studies the universe within consciousness expanding infinitely. Both are explorations into infinity. Gurudev says the universe is infinitely deep, all knowledge is within. Through meditation, we experience that depth firsthand. The Purusha Sukta describes creation emerging from the cosmic being. The Purusha Each individual contains that same template. Gurudev's analogy bridges astronomy and Atmavidya. Both inquire into origin, structure, and destiny. Just as astronomers build telescopes to look outward, yogis turn the gaze inward through meditation. The inner cosmos reveals the infinite knowledge. Now, how does this discourse help modern seekers balance science and spirituality? Jayadeva Gurudev dissolves the boundary between science and spirituality. He shows that both seek truth through observation, one outward, one inward. For a modern mind accustomed to logic, this approach is liberating. Meditation becomes an empirical method for inner discovery, just as physics experiments reveal outer laws. The Vedas never separated science from spirituality. The Jyotish, the Ayurveda, Vastu, and Yoga were all sciences rooted in consciousness. Buddha revives this integrated and integral approach, encouraging seekers to be both rational and reverential. He invites us to experience divinity not as dogma, but as reality perceivable through awareness, just as laws of motion are perceived through reason. Now, why does Gurudev say energy and the person are not separate? Because in truth, there is no you apart from energy. Your body, thoughts, and emotions are patterns of prana vibrating at different frequencies. Gurudev invites us to perceive this. When awareness expands, the illusion of separation dissolves. You are not burning or shining, you are the very energy field itself. Now, in Mandukya Upanishad, consciousness is described as Advaita or the non dual. The individual Jiva and the energy Shakti are not separate from the whole or the Brahman. Gurudev's words echo that timeless truth. The observer, the observed, and the observation are one continuum. Realizing this ends all inner conflict. The person and the energy are one flame. Jai Gurudev. Now, Gurudev begins by saying, "You should know that you have no responsibility." Isn't that a bold statement? And how should one understand it in practical life? Jagadev, it sounds paradoxical, but it's profoundly liberating. Gurudev isn't denying worldly duties, he's redefining the sense of doership. He points to the bigger mind, the cosmic intelligence that governs everything. When we realize that our life is orchestrated by a universal consciousness, our personal burden of I am responsible for everything drops. This doesn't make our one careless. Instead, it creates effortless responsibility. Actions continue, but anxiety disappears. It's like a wave realizing it's part of the ocean. The ocean carries it, yet it moves naturally. In management, family, or service, this awareness allows deeper efficiency and peace. One acts out of love, not pressure. That's true karma yoga, dynamic action with the inner stillness. So when Gurudev says all your responsibility is the responsibility of the bigger mind, is he speaking of surrender? Absolutely, this is the essence of surrender or the Ishwar Pranidhana. It's not escapism, it's an alignment when we acknowledge that the cosmic intelligence manages galaxies, bodies, and breath without our permission. We understand our small intellect is not the master planner. The bigger mind is the divine consciousness. You can call it God, nature, or Brahman. Surrender here means trust that life unfolds perfectly. When we resist, we suffer. When we align, grace flows. Gurudev teaches that surrender is strength. It doesn't mean inaction, it means action guided by intuition rather than ego. Once the burden of false responsibility drops, creativity and compassion rise spontaneously. Now, Gurudev calls this realization freedom. How is freedom linked with letting go of personal responsibility? Jagadev, true freedom is a freedom from the mind, not just freedom from the mind. Most people think freedom means doing what they want. Gurudev redefines it as freedom from compulsion. When one knows the bigger mind is operating through them, guilt and pride vanish. There is no tension in decision making. You still act, but you know you are an instrument. This freedom is spiritual maturity. It makes life lighter, simpler, and yet deeply meaningful. The mind stops oscillating between past regrets and future fears. One becomes present and available to the divine flow. That's why Gurudev says, isn't it freedom? It's the ultimate liberation while living. Now, Gurudev says, bless everyone. How does blessing connect with this state of freedom? Blessing is the natural expression of expansion when individuality dissolves into universality. One sees that all beings are as a part of oneself. Gurudev says, everybody is not everybody. They are like shells in the ocean. The ocean or the consciousness is one. The shells, the bodies and egos are many. When this understanding dawns, judgment falls away, compassion rises, and blessing becomes spontaneous. It's not a ritual, it's a vibration of goodwill flowing through an open heart. A free mind blesses naturally because it recognizes the same divinity in all. That's why Gurudev often guides us in meditation. Bless everyone. It keeps our energy elevated and our awareness connected to the bigger mind. Now, he also says this knowledge brings freedom to the mind. How does awareness itself free us? Jagadav, knowledge here means self awareness, knowing I am not this limited body or mind. I am the oceanic consciousness. Such knowledge loosens cravings, fears, and attachments. The mind becomes spacious. Gurudev emphasizes that the moment awareness dawns, bondage begins to dissolve. Freedom doesn't have to be achieved, it's already there, but awareness reveals it just as darkness vanishes when light enters, ignorance disappears when understanding dawns. Meditation and knowledge sessions are not intellectual exercises, they are reminders of what we already are. Gurudev's grace makes this ancient Vedantic wisdom experiential, not merely philosophical. Now, Gurudev also mentions that this freedom doesn't come instantly. Why is patience emphasized? Because transformation is gradual. Gurudev reminds us it's not going to happen right away, but it's good to keep it at the back of the mind. Awareness has to mature through sadhana, seva, and satsang. The intellect grabs the concept quickly, but the emotional and energetic layers need time. Regular practice of Sudarshan Kriya, meditation, and selfless service integrates this knowledge into daily living. Gurudev's compassion lies in this realism. He doesn't demand perfection, only persistence. He tells us to trust you have it, that trust itself accelerates inner evolution. Like a seed, knowledge sprouts when the soil of patience and faith are fertile. Now, Gurudev says, keep the mind under the presence of every positive state. What does that practically mean? It means to anchor awareness in positivity regardless of circumstances. The mind is like a mirror, it reflects whatever it's turned toward. Gurudev's teaching is to consciously choose the higher states of gratitude, compassion, and surrender. This doesn't mean denying negativity, it means not identifying with it. When the mind stays under the presence of positivity, energy rises and intuition strengthens. Gurudev says techniques like Bhastrika, meditation, three-stage pranayama, and Sudarshan Kriya, and chanting purify mental impressions and samskaras, making positivity natural. The goal isn't fake optimism, it's a stable serenity. Even amid chaos, a yogi remains centered for his awareness rests in the divine presence. Now, Gurudev refers to a story about the last thought of life. Why is the final thought so important? Because the final thought reflects the entire vibrational quality of one's consciousness. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, whatever you remember at the end of life, that you attain. Gurudev beautifully reiterates this. Our last thought is an indicator of our life's spiritual maturity. If throughout life we cultivate awareness, surrender, and devotion, our final thought naturally turns to the divine. That's liberation. Gurudev reminds us not to panic about it, but to live every moment consciously so that the final moment takes care of itself. It's like a lifelong practice of being God conscious, not just at the end, but in every breath. Now he says, at the end of life, you cannot have ownership, only the divine remains. What does this signify? Jagadav, ownership is the ego's greatest illusion. Gurudev points out that at the end, everything, name, fame, possessions, drops. What remains is a pure awareness. Realizing this before death is wisdom. That is why saints live light. They possess without being possessed. Gurudev encourages us to live every day as if we own nothing but are caretakers of the divine display. This attitude transforms fear into gratitude, death into death, then becomes not an end but a transition, a return to the bigger mind. The wise live in that awareness now, freeing themselves from the heavy burden of mine and me. Now, Gurudev says even if someone has said wrong things, they are not wrong. How should one interpret this compassion? Gurudev's statement comes from a plane of expanded consciousness. When one sees from the ocean's perspective, no wave is separate. People act out of their conditioning and ignorance. From a higher awareness, we see that even mistakes are part of divine play for evolution. This doesn't mean we justify wrongdoing, it means we don't hold hatred or grudges. Forgiveness flows naturally. Gurudev teaches that love is not blind, it is inclusive. When we bless even those who hurt us, we rise above duality. This is how karma dissolves, not through argument, but through compassion born of deep understanding. Now, Gurudev remarks someone who is very much established on the path will not take it for granted. Why this warning? Because spiritual maturity includes humility. Gurudev warns against complacency. Even advanced seekers can fall into subtle pride, believing I know it all. He reminds us that true depth lies in wonder and reverence, not certainty. Each moment offers a fresh glimpse of the infinite. Taking the path for granted hardens the mind. Reverence keeps it soft and receptive. Gurudev, though a realized master, continues to demonstrate childlike joy. His life itself is a teaching that awareness, devotion, and humility must go hand in hand. The more we progress, the more grateful we must become. Now, Gurudev says, even if you're not positive, it's not going to affect you. Isn't that contradictory? It seems so at first, but the Gurudev is speaking from the level of the self, not the mind. The self is untouched by moods or emotions, it is pure awareness. The clouds of negativity may pass, but the sky of consciousness remains clear. Gurudev wants seekers to stop identifying with transient emotions. Negativity doesn't define you, it merely visits you. The moment you know, I am not this emotion, it loses power. That's why Gurudev's meditations are so transformative. They help you experience that untouched space within. From there, even negativity becomes a wave in the vast ocean of peace. Now, Gurudev warns that this knowledge is not meant for everyone. Why? Gurudev, because profound truths can be misunderstood, Gurudev says, this cannot be said to someone who is not on the path. For an unprepared mind. Hearing you have no responsibility could justify carelessness or indulgence. Hence, such knowledge must be shared with reverence and readiness. Spiritual maturity means balancing wisdom with discipline. Without sadhana, knowledge becomes intellectual pride. Gurudev gives knowledge only when the seeker's heart is open and grounded in practice. That's why Art of Living emphasizes both the knowledge sessions and daily sadhana to ensure realization, not misinterpretation. Now, Gurudev mentions intoxication as a state that misuses knowledge. What does he mean by this? Intoxication here symbolizes delusion, being lost in sensory or egoic indulgence. Gurudev says a person under intoxication may misuse spiritual truths to justify laziness or irresponsibility. For instance, saying, I am not the doer while avoiding duty. True detachment comes from awareness, not dullness. Intoxication blunts awareness. Meditation sharpens it. Gurudev cautions seekers to be alert. Knowledge should uplift, not become an escape. The real joy is in being fully awake and alive. When awareness deepens, life itself becomes a divine celebration, not a narcotic trance. Now, how can one integrate the awareness of the bigger mind in the daily challenges? By constantly reminding oneself, I am part of a grand orchestration. Whether you face success or failure, see it as a bigger mind's display. Gurudev's practical tools like Sudarshan Kriya, chanting, and Seva help maintain this remembrance. Before major decisions, simply pause and say, let thy will be done. This shifts perception from anxiety to surrender. Over time, you will notice synchronicity is guiding your path. Gurudev often says, you don't walk alone, the divine walks with you. Integration means living that truth consciously in every action. Now, how does this knowledge change one's relationship with suffering? Gurudev transforms suffering into wisdom. Gurudev reminds us suffering is not good, but awareness of suffering is sacred. It awakens compassion when you see suffering as temporary and yourself as eternal. Pain loses its sting. Instead of resistance, you develop resilience. Gurudev teaches that the purpose of pain is purification. It dissolves ego and opens the heart. The moment you observe suffering without identifying with it, it becomes energy for spiritual growth. Meditation turns wounds into wisdom. The bigger mind uses even suffering as a step toward liberation. Now, how can seekers cultivate the art of trust, which Gurudev emphasizes? Trust grows through experience, not argument. Gurudev advises, just trust you have it. That sentence is powerful. It means trust isn't a feeling to develop, it's already within us. We simply uncover it every time you surrender control and see life unfold beautifully. Trust deepens. Regular sadhana strengthens this faith. When the breath settles, the mind quiets, and intuition whispers, all is well. That's the voice of trust. It makes you fearless, creative, and deeply content. Gurudev's grace acts as a catalyst for that awakening. How does Gurudev's discourse reconcile ancient Vedanta with modern psychology? That's brilliantly. Vedanta speaks of Atman and Maya. Psychology speaks of conscious and subconscious patterns. Gurudev bridges them effortlessly. He says the bigger mind is like the universal consciousness that governs all thoughts. The personal mind's anxieties stem from over identification with limited identity. By relaxing into the bigger mind through breath and awareness, psychological stress dissolves naturally. His approach integrates neuroscience to breath regulation with the ancient meditation science. Thus, Gurudev's wisdom modernizes Vedanta, making it accessible to a 21st century seeker without losing its sanctity. Now, what role does collective meditation play in realizing this bigger mind? Enormous. When thousands meditate together, individual vibrations merge into one vast field. That collective coherence mirrors the bigger mind in form. Gurudev often says, when the mind becomes still, the universe listens. Group meditation amplifies that stillness. It dissolves individual boundaries and awakens a sense of universal belonging. At the Art of Living International Center, such meditations are not mere practices, they are glimpses of cosmic harmony. Gurudev speaks of one experiences firsthand that the same consciousness breathes through all beings. To conclude, what is the essence of Gurudev's day for message from you and the universe? The essence is freedom. Freedom through awareness. Gurudev takes us from the illusion of individual responsibility to the truth of divine orchestration. He invites us to trust, bless, and surrender, to see ourselves as shells in the infinite ocean of consciousness. This realization doesn't withdraw us from life, it beautifies it. One acts fully, loves deeply, and yet remains untouched. The mind becomes an instrument of the bigger mind. In Gurudev's words, when you know the ocean is right, the shells are naturally beautiful. That is divine art of living, Jai Gurudev.